The Toronto Blue Jays have a golden opportunity when it comes to acquiring this player for virtually nothing, and they have a big hole at the third base position. This can go a long ways towards solving that, so we'll break it down and much more on this episode of Jays Digest. Welcome in, everybody, to Jay's Digest. I'm your host, Peter Vryonis, alongside host Nick Gosse. And Nick, we've been talking a lot about the free agency rumor mill. We've been talking about some potential trades that might go down with the Toronto Blue Jays. But one notable player in Major League Baseball has, I wouldn't say he requested a trade, but that team is said to be moving him no matter what this offseason. And even though it comes with a hefty price tag, and he does have a declining skill set. He sounds like a Blue Jay already. Sign him up. But it's possible that the Blue Jays could go out and swing a trade for this guy, which would go a long way towards helping them being competitive in 2025 and years beyond that. And maybe be able to acquire him for virtually nothing. So, a very interesting talking point here, Nick. And one of my favorite players in Major League Baseball, one of my favorite players ever as a third baseman myself. So, I'm excited about the possibility of this potentially happening.
Yeah, and as of the time of recording, a new report just dropped about an hour or two ago. And Peter, that player that we're all discussing right now is Nolan Arenado. And you can see this here breaking. The Cardinals have officially informed Nolan Arenado they plan on trading the All-Star third baseman this winter. And there's a follow-up tweet basically saying that Arenado has informed the Cardinals that he is willing to waive his no-move clause and is fine as long as it's to a team that at least is trying to contend. So Peter, again, this just dropped. Very interesting information, and he is going to get traded. And when you look at, we'll dive into the contract and all those details and what the Jays could potentially give up. But he's coming off of a down season, the worst one of his career since his rookie year, really. A 719 OPS, still very good defensively. But Peter, this might be a great time for the Toronto Blue Jays. They desperately need to solve their third baseman spot. We've been talking about Alex Bregman as a potential solution, but this could be a guy that could fill the hole. He is 33 years old, but they only need the hole filled for a few years until they find a prospect anyways.
Yeah, exactly. And another thing that I look at with Nolan Arenado is just the consistency, not necessarily with the performance because he did have a couple of down years in the past few seasons here. But I'm looking at the games played, and you see the number of games played: 157, 148, 144, 152. Those are big numbers right there. And that proves that he can play every single day at third base. He's great defensively, like you touched on. He has lost a step a little bit, and maybe his arm isn't as great as it was back in the Colorado days, but he's got fantastic defensive instincts, and he would solve a lot of issues and make it easier on Bichette, who would be the shortstop. And a move like this, to me, signifies that the Blue Jays want to be competitive, and that is probably enticing to Nolan Arenado, enticing enough for him to want to waive his no trade clause and have the Blue Jays as a potential destination. Now, I don't know. I don't know if this is a move that the Jays want to make. They said that they want to be competitive in 2025, and there aren't many better options at third base apart from maybe Alex Bregman, who we've been talking a lot about on this channel. Maybe a trade partner as well. Like, we don't really know how many options there are truly that the Blue Jays could go after, but Nolan Arenado is one of the more consistent ones that they could definitely target. And even though he does have a declining skill set, he's one who has come up with some very big hits. He's a run producer and great defensively. So that makes the job of Bo Bichette a lot easier. And I think that if we look at him compared to Matt Chapman, who would you rather have? I would rather have Nolan Arenado, to be honest with you. And maybe there's a bit worse defensive metrics for Arenado compared to Matt Chapman, but the bat is more reliable. Even with the down season last year, he's not as prone to the strikeout, and he is a run producer, a guy who has produced over 100 runs multiple times in his career. And even in a down season last year, he had 71 ribbies for the St. Louis Cardinals, who ended up missing the playoffs. So yeah, a down year for Nolan Arenado, still a pretty damn good year, and it's much better than the carousel of third baseman that the Blue Jays had this year occupying that position.
And again, Ross Atkins has signified that he wants to compete in 2025, and this would be a guy that would help them do just that. We're going to dive into what a trade could look like. Quick note on his baseball savant from last year. The hitting metrics weren't phenomenal. The defense was still very solid, 9 outs above average. So he can still play defense very well, like you mentioned. And I think the hitting again, the Cardinals weren't very competitive last year. Maybe that had something to do with it. But Peter, as we look now into a potential trade in his contract, he has some years left on his deal,
Yeah.
2027, and he'll be a free agent in 2028. So this would give them it would shore up their third base position for a while, but the only concern again would be whether or not this decline continues. The year before last, he was an All-Star in 144 games played. Of course, All-Star the prior 3 years, ever since getting traded to the St. Louis Cardinals from the Colorado Rockies. But now you're looking at it, and is this a package that Ross Atkins? Again, you're probably not going to have to give up too much for him. We can dive into that now. You're also going to be on the hook for that salary for a while. That being said, you're also going to be on the hook for a similar salary with Alex Bregman. So I think no matter who you're paying for it, you're going to have
Yeah.
to pay a lot of money anyways. And if you're giving up a young asset, nothing too crazy. I don't think they're going to give up a top 10 prospect, maybe in the late tens for him, or a guy that we've discussed, Peter, is potentially swapping Addison Barger, because you think about, and I'll let you take over here in a second, from the Colorado Rockies when that trade went down, there was some salary that was kept from the Rockies in order to get off of his contract.
Right, right. Now, the Colorado Rockies actually gave St. Louis $50 million to make this trade. And at the time, Nolan Arenado was one of the best players in baseball. He's not that anymore. So, which makes me think if the Blue Jays were to make this trade, it wouldn't take much. They would probably be able to get him for a bag of chips. And I don't know if St. Louis would be willing to eat any money in that case, but still, you have him for 3 seasons. It is a little bit of a steep price tag, but you can get him for virtually nothing. And if the Blue Jays are really serious about being a good ball club next year, I think getting Nolan Arenado or getting a premier third baseman helps them with that because no disrespect to Ernie Clement or anyone else who is occupying that position, but I just think having a seasoned veteran there who is very good defensively, who can come up with a big hit for you every now and then. Even in a down year last year, he still would have had some of the best numbers on the Blue Jays offensively, which is not saying much because the team really struggled mightily on that side of the ball there. But still, like I'll take him. Those are pretty good metrics. He doesn't strike out like we mentioned, and it's a steep price tag, over $20 million for the next 3 seasons for a guy who's 33. So you're gonna have him until you're 30. He's 36. That's we've seen the decline of George Springer. Now Springer was more injury prone when he came over to the Blue Jays, whereas Arenado pretty consistently in the lineup every day. So maybe we're comparing apples and oranges here, but playing a premier position like that, you tend to decline pretty quickly. So I wouldn't be shocked if the Blue Jays stayed away, but at the same time, I don't think there are many better options out there. I would take Bregman, but I think Bregman would command a 5-year deal. And Bregman is a little bit younger, and we've already seen his skill set start to decline pretty drastically as well. So it just depends where the Blue Jays are at in that frame of mind. But I think Arenado is definitely going to be a great get. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But you have around $50 million to play with this offseason, considering where the Blue Jays are at with their budget. And I think this would be a smart move.
Yeah, I mean, if you told me that you'd sign up for Arenado over the next handful of seasons for an average of $21 million a year and he was a free agent, I would take that every day of the week. And if the Jays can use some of their leverage here compared to some other teams and use the cap space they have to only, don't make the Cardinals pay any money and then maybe give up a bit of a lesser prospect like Addison Barger or someone else, I'd be all for it. But let us know in the comments what your thoughts are on this. A very interesting one today. I'm excited to see what the Jays do because ultimately they need to make some moves and they need to make some moves very, very soon after the World Series. Any final thoughts, Peter?
Yeah, I'll compare it to a situation that we had in 2015 with Troy Tulowitzki, a guy who had a bit of a declining skill set, but he was a veteran, a guy who obviously had some great years in the past, probably going to be a Hall of Famer when it's all said and done. And then he comes over to the Blue Jays. He shores them up defensively. He's a calming veteran presence, and he's a big reason why they went deep into the playoffs. Maybe his numbers weren't as gaudy as they were in Colorado, where he was putting up near 900 OPS kinds of seasons at the shortstop position. But the Blue Jays didn't need to make that move. They had a Jose Reyes at the position who was already a pretty damn good player, who was their leadoff hitter for the majority of his time there. So they swapped him out because they said, I think we can get something a little bit better here and something that moves the needle a little bit more for us that makes us more competitive. And I think that's what Nolan Arenado would do. Maybe not to the same effect as Troy Tulowitzki because the team was also better when Tulowitzki was acquired, but who knows? This could be a move that really pushes the Blue Jays in that direction, and it might entice guys like Vladdy to stay. It might entice guys like Bo to stay because hey, all right, we're trying to acquire the talent. We're trying to be better in 2025, and we're spending the money. We're not just hoarding it and making sure that we have an okay product on the field. We want to be better than that, and I think that sends a message throughout the clubhouse.
Yeah, and hopefully they can actually make a move that gets us more excited than it did last season with their lackluster moves you ultimately ended up
Yeah.
making. But let us know in the comments, do you want to see Nolan Arenado on the Blue Jays? What kind of trade do you want to see? Do you think a Berger for Arenado framework works? Let us know. We'll see you guys tomorrow.